You know, this does not seem like December 15th. We're living in Colby, Kansas, and it's going to be 50 degrees outside today. And I gotta say, I love it. I don't like scooping snow. I would rather have rain any day of the week. I don't like cold weather. Which is unusual because I always have to have the fan on because it's too hot. So you'd think that I would love cold weather. But 50 degrees is just perfect weather for me. Whether there's leaves on the tree or not, I just enjoy it. This morning I want to talk to you about something that came up to me. I don't know if anybody else looks at YouTube things and gets those little things that pop up on Facebook, but there was something that just kind of stimulated me. And so that's what the reason for our sermon title today, Jesus, the Way to the Father. So let's have a word of prayer before we start. Gracious Father, we thank you so much for those who are tuning in on Facebook and those who will be watching later on YouTube. We just ask your blessing, Father, on our congregation here, that your Spirit might join with us as we open your word to determine what you have for us today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. How many times have you seen a sign like this? Have you ever been one of those people that didn't see the sign and found yourself driving the wrong way? That happened to me a week ago. We were coming back from Garden City, and we had to go through Scott City. And Denise said, "Oh, look at that house." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Turn around and go back." So I took my first right turn. Lo and behold, I was going the wrong way on a one-way street. There was a car coming, and they look at me like, "What are you doing here?" See, so many of us, we live a life that there's more than one way to skin a cat. I remember when I took anatomy lab, we had to have cats that we dissected, and there was actually a book on more than one way to dissect a cat. And as human beings, I think we all want to have options. We all want to see that there's more than one way to do things. There's my way, there's your way, there's somebody else's way, and we're all good. Right? How many times have you heard that from someone? "Oh, it's all good." One of my least favorite phrases ever. But recently on YouTube, there's been, at least the things that I've been looking at anyway, there's been a little bit of a battle that's gone on. It involves some pretty famous people. I don't know if you recognize the people in the picture now. You have Joel Osteen, Oprah Winfrey, and Benny Hinn. Right? And it's not just Benny Hinn, but it's lots of other people. Apparently, Oprah had Joel Osteen on a program, and they were talking about God and how many ways there are to God, and who can get to heaven and who can't get to heaven, etc., etc. And so Benny Hinn and a host of other people are posting videos in protest to what was said between Oprah and Joel Osteen. Now, I'm not trying to take anybody's side or defend anybody, but I think as I listened to the interview as it originally was, I think you can find room for what they said. But I think in our society that it's really easy to run around pointing fingers at somebody else and say, "You're wrong for what you believe, and I'm right, and that's why everybody should follow me, because I'm the one that's right and everybody else is wrong." Well, I don't know about you, but I don't always feel that somebody else is right. I know I'm always right. Dwight L. Moody and several other people, there's been books and movies, and you even see Mahatma Gandhi in there. Ways to heaven. It seems like it's sort of a popular search for people because people realize that we're lacking something and that we want there to be something beyond what we have here. You know, modern science teaches us that the life that we have here is, 70, 80, 90 years, whatever, and then you're done. You just dissolve into the ground. I have friends that think that way, relatives that think that way, and I'm sorry, I can't buy that. I think there has to be something more. And so let me ask you, is there one way? One of our scripture reading this morning, part of it anyway, Jesus said to him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Well, wait a second. Why would that be true? Why can't there be more than one way to get into heaven? Why can't there be more than one way to seek God? And that was what the argument was with Joel Osteen and Oprah and Benny Hinn and those guys. But let me take you back to the beginning and think about where all of this kind of got its start. Now, from a biblical standpoint, the thing that most of us think of is we think about Adam and Eve and the tree, right? More about Eve and the tree. And few people realize that argument went way back in history, we don't even know when there was a rebellion up in heaven. Remember the book of Revelation says there was war in heaven. Michael and his angel fought against the dragon and his angels. And Michael prevailed, and the dragon was sent down to this earth, right? Cast out, a third of the angels with him. Right? But we always focus on Eve. And we look at the issue with Eve and we think, well, sin started on our planet. Well, sin didn't really start on our planet. Sin started in heaven. And in heaven, it wasn't about an apple. Was it?
No.
It was about God's character and who could we trust. And really, when you think about it, when it comes down to the Garden of Eden and Eve and the apple, assuming it was an apple, it was a piece of fruit. We don't know. We always blame the apple. I'm not sure why. Apple's a perfectly good piece of fruit. What if it was a pear? Pomegranate. Pomegranates are red, sort of.
It would be pear, Adam's pear.
Adam's apple, right? That's why we have this here, because the apple got stuck in Adam's throat. As somebody said that. I don't know if that's true. But when Eve made the choice to go away from Adam and go to the tree of knowledge of good and evil and take a bite of this fruit, in effect she was saying, I don't know, God, if I can trust you. I don't know if I can believe that what you said is true. You know, God said, in the day you eat thereof, you will surely die. You know, and it's interesting to me that when we think about it, that of all the trees, he said, you may eat freely of any tree in the garden. Just this one tree, I don't want you to go near this tree. Think about it for a second. If you were told as a child that you can play with anybody in the neighborhood except the kid that lives in that house, what's your first step?
To the house.
Right? If you tell your daughter you can date anybody you want except that guy. If you tell your son you can hang out with anybody you want except those people. What is it in our nature that causes us to seek out the one thing we're told not to do? Now, as parents, you recognize that when you tell your kids not to hang out with people and not to go to certain places, not to do certain things, that you're doing that because you know that there's a possibility of injury or damage if they see those people and do those things. Right? Same is true for God when he told Eve about the tree. That was the one place God had confined Satan to, that one spot. That was the only place he could tempt him. And I think that was out of mercy that God did that, so that we wouldn't, every step of our life, you know, as long as we remain in a fellowship, trusting relationship with God, that he could protect us. There's one way that seems right unto a man, but it's a way that leads to death. That's from Proverbs 14:12. And have you noticed that in your life? That you may come up with what you think is a great idea, and it completely blows up in your face. You may think that this person is just the right person for you, and it turns out to be a real tragic mistake. But so there's a way that seems right to us, but since we don't have that foreknowledge of God, since we don't have an understanding of the great controversy and the conflict in heaven, what we choose tends to be the wrong side. Look here how far back it goes, and this is Genesis 6, verse 5. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of thought of the human heart was only evil all the time. How tragic. You've met these people in life that they never have a nice, positive thing to say about anything, right? Everything is negative. You say, what a wonderful day is. They say, oh yeah, but this. And you say, well, what about this? This is so good. And oh yeah, but there's this. There's always something negative. Well, the human race, the entire human race, and you might say, well, except for Noah and his family who got on the ark, the entire human race, every thought in their mind was continually of evil. I can't imagine a society like that. But, you know, when you look on the news, you see a ton of negativity around you. And it's not just in the Old Testament. I mean, that all got washed away with the flood, right? Look in here in Mark 7:21. Out of the heart of man comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. That's what comes out of us. It's not what goes into us if you've read all of Mark 7. It's not about you didn't wash your hands right, you didn't wash the dishes right, that makes you unclean. It's what's in here. And what's in here is really what's in here. And it comes through a thought process that we have. The things that are expressed from our heart are really emotions and feelings and thoughts that we have. Now I want to share with you some stuff there's several different things. This all comes from author named Ellen White. She wrote a lot of books that help us to maybe see a little bit better picture of God, a little bit of narrative about that. So I want to share just a few things with you. The earth was dark through misapprehension of God. Wow, she could have written that today, couldn't she? Mm-hmm. That the gloomy shadows might be lightened, that the world might be brought back to God, Satan's deceptive power was to be broken. This could not be done by force. The exercise of force is contrary to the principles of God's government. Have you ever heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but can't make him drink? Have you ever tried to force your dog in the bathtub? Right? If we try to force an idea upon somebody, they may say, for expediency's sake, sure, I'll do it that way. But in their heart, in their mind, have you really convinced them? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, right? This speaking of God, he desires only the service of love, and love cannot be commanded. It cannot be won by force or authority. If I hold a gun to your head, can I make you love me? No. Only by love is love awakened. To know God is to love him. His character must be manifest in contrast to the character of Satan. Now, if you live in a house that's always 65 degrees, you don't know what cold is, and you don't know what hot is. You only know what 65 is. We all live here in Colby, Kansas, whatever city you're living in, watching on Facebook or YouTube. We all live in our own little fishbowl, our own little paradigm of reality. We see things through certain glasses. The way we were brought up, the friends we hang out with, the education we've had. We don't get a grander, more world perspective. We can try turning on the news and we can try taking trips. But, you know, the saying has always been true. You can't understand another man unless you walk a mile in their shoes. Right? And even if you walk a mile in their shoes, that's not the same as walking 40 years in their shoes, or 50 or 60 years in their shoes. To know what kind of, I hate to say damage, that they've succumbed to. We all get bumps and bruises in life, and we all need some of that brainwashing taken away from us. This work could only be one being and all the universe could do. Only he who knew the height and depth and love of God could make it known. Upon the world's dark night, the Son of Righteousness must rise with healing in his wings. That all came from Desire of Ages, that last little bit was Malachi 4. When you think about it for a second, if the great controversy started in heaven with questions about God's character and God's goodness and God's love, only one who was God could demonstrate that. Behold, a virgin shall be with a child, and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated is God with us. Can you imagine that? We can only extrapolate from the data that we have from the Bible and from history and from other books what it would be like to have God with us. Can you imagine that? You know what it's like to have your spouse with you, to have your children with you, but to have God with you. And the truth is, I think a lot of people back then didn't even know that God was with them. They were so busy being brainwashed and infected by the popular theology of the day. Now, this is going to be a little commercial break, and it doesn't seem like it's going to make much sense. Helicobacter pylori, H. pylori, right? These types of bacteria, these germs can enter your body and live in your digestive tract. After many years, they cause sores called ulcers in the lining of your stomach and the upper part of your small intestine. For some people, an infection can lead to stomach cancer. Now, how does that seem to fit, right? Look at the next slide. You can get H. pylori from food, water, utensils. Many people get H. pylori during childhood, but some adults can get it too. So what does that mean for us? The truth is, our picture of God is put into us when we're children. Hitler was famous for saying, you give me a child until they're 8 years old, I'll have them the rest of their life. Scripture says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Old habits are hard to break. You can't teach a dog new tricks, right? We all know these things, but we don't ever think that this boils down to theology as well. We don't realize that the image of God that we got from our parents when we were just itty-bitty kids, it hangs with us. And sometimes, if that's the wrong picture, that can be very detrimental. So that many years later, this infection starts eating away at us from the inside, just like H. pylori, and can cause ulcers and cancer and even death if it's not taken care of. Ellen White again. This is in several places. There's a little reference down there. The religion of the Bible, full of love and goodness, is darkened by superstition and clothed with terror. Satan has painted the character of God in false colors. Our merciful Creator is feared, dreaded, and even hated. The appalling views of God, which have been spread over the world from the teachings of the pulpit, have made millions of skeptics and infidels. Think about that. I've said this before, I've shared this quote before, that the things that people have said from the pulpit, in the churches, in our country and all around the world, have so skewed people's idea of what God is like that people have wholesalely rejected God. I mean, do you know anybody that says, well, if that's how God is, I don't want anything to do with him. I just don't believe in organized religion anymore. I believe in an inner spiritual, right? We know those people. Some of you people are probably watching. Look at what else we say. Satan sought to intercept every ray of light from the throne of God. He sought to cast a shadow upon the earth that men might lose their true views of God's character, and that the knowledge of God might become extinct in the earth. He had caused truth of vital importance to be so mingled with error that it had lost its significance. Now, when you think about the world today, how significant is religion in a relationship with God? Millions, billions of people don't have any time for God. It's so not important to them. And at this Christmas season, we have an opportunity to look at Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, God with us, came to show us something. Look at the next one. This is Steps to Christ. I'm sorry, Signs of the Times, January 1890. This has been around for a long time, guys. The Father was revealed in Christ as altogether different being from what Satan had represented him to be. Said Christ, neither knoweth any man the Father, save the Son, and whomsoever the Son will reveal. You don't know God like I know God, and you can't know God unless you know me. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father, Jesus said, right? We'll share that in a minute. The law of Jehovah was burdened with needless exactions and traditions, and God was represented as severe, exacting, revengeful, and arbitrary. He was pictured as one who could take pleasure in the suffering of his creatures. The very attributes that belong to the character of Satan, the evil one, represented as belonging to the character of God. Have you ever heard from a preacher that if you don't get your act together, that you're going to go to hell and that God's going to burn you forever and ever? Where's the love there? Jesus came to teach men of the Father, to correctly represent him before the fallen children of earth. Angels could not fully portray the character of God, but Christ, who is the living impersonation of God, could not fail to accomplish this work. The only way which he could set and keep men right was to make himself visible and familiar to their eyes, that men might have salvation. He came directly to man and became a partaker of his nature. The only way, remember that's what this is about? Jesus is the way. The only way that God could set and keep men right was for Jesus Christ to come to this earth in the form of a human being, so that we could see, feel, and touch what God was like, and realize that this is different than anything I've ever heard before. This is astronomical. This is a complete change of the paradigm. Jesus said, do not let your heart be troubled. You just got to read John 14. I mean, I'm just giving you a little bit of John 14. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are so many mansions and dwelling places. If it were not so, I would tell you, but I go and prepare a place for you. If I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. I don't want you to be afraid. I don't want you to be worried, burdened, troubled. There's a better place in this, and I'm coming back to get you. You can believe me. You can trust me. You know the way that I'm going and where I'm going? But Thomas, you remember doubting Thomas, right? He said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered and said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except by me. Here's the thing. You can't come to the true Father. There's a lot of churches, a lot of religions, and they all talk about God. And they all have a picture of God. But if you have the wrong picture of God, you're going to go to the wrong place. Right? If you dial in the wrong address into your GPS and you follow the directions, you're going to get to the wrong place. You have to have the right picture of God to get to the right concept of what the Father is like. And that's the only way we can get to the Father, is by looking at Jesus and seeing Him. Look at this next slide. There's a little narrative here at the top. It says, Jesus is the keyhole through whom I can see the light of God. The Scriptures, truth, righteousness, compassion, and grace of God. The closer I am to Jesus, the more light I can see, and the more of God I can humbly share. Think about that for a second. They show an old-fashioned keyhole here. When you look at light coming through a keyhole, it's not very big. But the closer you get to that, the more you can see. So this illustration is really true. The more you can see that light, and the more you can share God. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know Him and have seen Him. Well, this isn't Thomas, this is Philip. We can say doubting Philip as well. Lord, show us the Father and we will be satisfied. He just said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. He said, Philip, don't you even know who I am? Even after all this time, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. Years ago, they had an event. The hospital held an event, or maybe it was a college, I don't remember which. I think it was a hospital. Anyway, there was a bunch of people sitting around a table, a bunch of plates and glasses and beer bottles and things like that. And we had a new manager for the OR, and he said to somebody at work one day, wow, I was at that party last night, and I saw John drinking. And one of the scrub techs that was there at the she wasn't even there at that event, I don't think. And she said, nope, absolutely not believing it for a second. He said, but I was there. I saw the beer bottle right next to where John was sitting. He said, nope, that's not John. I know John. John would not do that. She knew my character well enough to know that I wouldn't have a drink. Now, that beer bottle was sitting by my plate, but it was belonging to the person who was sitting next to me who had gotten up and left. Right? But so it was just like this empty table, you know. You don't know who's drinking what at that table, do you? You just know that somebody was sitting there, and now there's a glass of whiskey or there's a bottle of beer or something sitting there. It must be that person. We tend to jump to conclusions, just like we jump to conclusions about God. And how fortunate for God that Jesus was able to defend His character. To say, that's not how my dad is. If you would know Him the way I know Him, and all you have to do is look at me and you can see. Catherine McCoy, I am convinced that abstract form, imagery, color, texture, material convey meaning equal to or greater than words. That doesn't even make much sense at first blush. How about this one? Actions speak louder than words. You can say all the wonderful things you want about God, but that doesn't mean near as much as having Jesus come into your life and revealing the Father to you. So that through words, through actions, through the, as she put it, let's back up here, through the abstract imagery, color, texture, material of life, Jesus with skin on Him, that we can see that those actions are greater than words. The last text, Matthew 5:16. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Jesus came so that we could impart that light into our own soul, and that our life could be a reflection of God's character just as much as Jesus' life was. Amen. Thank you.
Very nice, John.
See if you can get it to finish.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh. Yeah, this thing.
Make it stop.